So you were on the ground covering recent APEC summit. How would you rate Lee Jae-myung's diplomacy?
Yeah, I think Korea looks like they got a relatively good deal relative to Japan. But there were a couple of things in their favor. I think the full story of the deal hasn't quite come out yet. But I think Lee Jae-myung should be given credit for, it seems, is that he refused to sign, and he was brave enough not to sign when a lot of people were telling him to sign. Mm-hmm. And this, in the end, this could have gone wrong, but a couple of things played out in his favor. I mean, first of all, when we're comparing to the Japan deal, Japan signed, and Japan signed on different terms, but Japan has a lot more money than Korea, a lot more money than Korea, because although now the GDP is at a kind of similar level, and in some ways of measuring it, Korea is kind of ahead of Japan. Japan's been a rich country for a very long time. Yes. And Korea's been it's still not technically developed economy, although it is a developed economy. But Korea's only been a developed economy for, a couple of decades, a few decades. So Korea has not had the time to accumulate the wealth, the financial firepower that Japan has. So Japan has reserves and financial resources that Korea simply doesn't have. And in some ways, this actually, interestingly, gave the Koreans more leverage, because the Koreans could say to the Americans, "We're sorry, we simply cannot give you this money. We don't have it."
That's what Lee Jae-myung continuously tell reporter, right?
So the Japanese do have the money, so it's harder for them to say no. So ironically, Japan being richer made their negotiation position kind of harder in some sense. So Korea was able to give a strong argument that, look, we literally cannot do this. So this is why the deal was being held out for a while. But the other thing that I think he had some very good fortune, that APEC was being held in South Korea. And this was important for two reasons. One, Trump did not just come to South Korea in order to talk to Lee Jae-myung. He came to talk to Xi Jinping, which was the big story of the week. And maybe Kim Jong-un, but from a global perspective. Yeah. And the Americans wanted to do a few things. First of all, Trump was doing like a tour of Asia, and they wanted to be able to say they had a deal in every stop, right? In every meeting that a deal would be done. Secondly, the Lee Jae-myung meeting was just before the Xi Jinping meeting, and so it would look very bad from the American perspective, just before meeting the Chinese, that deal with Korea would blow up in a crisis with the host country just before the Xi Jinping thing. So I think a mixture of, it looks like, well-handled negotiating, plus a bit of fortune with the APEC summit happening in Seoul, came together. And it looks like the Korean deal, so far, we don't have the official details yet, but if, as reported, this investment in the US is $20 billion a year, that's manageable, and so it's okay. So you have to say that Lee Jae-myung deserves some respect so far for how it's went in a very difficult situation.
I just wanted to ask you this. What was the view among the foreign correspondents or journalists on the decision to award President Trump crown and medal? I know that was the headline. Most of the global news covered that news, right? Because there's no kings running in US.
Yes. First of all, South Korea is not the first country to have tried this over-the-top, we call them English blandishments. I don't know how you translate blandishments, but they are, gifts and things to make somebody feel good. And look, Britain, which really does have a monarchy still, Britain did something similar. Britain invited Donald Trump for a second state visit. He was the first US president ever to have two state visits. And he went to Windsor Castle, and he was met by the king like an old friend, and they gave him all of the ceremony, everything they possibly could. And of course, a lot of people in Britain also felt this was a bit humiliating, that we're using our monarchy to do this, although in some senses that's what a monarchy is for, is to do this kind of stuff. We know that Trump loves the Gulf monarchies, golden palaces, and family members doing business and government and private business mixed. So Trump has a kind of Gulf monarchy style of governing and especially of diplomacy. If you think that the Qatari government gave Donald Trump a $400 million airliner, I think a replica crown is actually not so bad. So it's the reality. It's a little bit, it's a little bit embarrassing for everyone concerned. But I think from the government's perspective, it may be, we may look a little bit, but Korea survived for hundreds of years, giving gifts to the Chinese emperor. So, you have you know how the game works. So now you're doing the same thing to the American emperor and hoping to survive. So.
But I heard from people living in New York, some people are actually angry. They are angry because we were dealing with Yoon Song-yeol, and he did the martial law and things like that, and they expected something different. But I don't know why they expected different thing. But some people saying it's kind of shame and disappointing from states. But
look, this is the kind of the serious point is that in the 4 years that I've been here, Korea has grown relatively much weaker, both economically and security-wise. Chinese technological power has got so much stronger in the last 4 years. When I was here, when I arrived 4 years ago, almost everyone in Korea assumed that Korean technology was better than Chinese technology. And now people realize that, okay, in some cases that's true, but in many cases it's not true anymore. So the Chinese technology has advanced so much, and the Chinese and the Korean technology, has moved at a much slower pace. Similarly, North Korean nuclear weapons program has grown and grown, and North Korea has got stronger and stronger, not just through nuclear weapons, but their relationship with Russia, their relationship with China has got stronger. So in both cases, China has got stronger technologically, and North Korea has got stronger militarily and diplomatically. And relative to that, South Korea has grown weaker. And in both cases, the answer from the South Korean perspective is the United States. You need United States protection from Chinese technology and exports, and you need American protection from North Korean nuclear weapons. So what we're seeing is a left-wing government in South Korea now looking very pro-American. And this is not because they love America more than the former left-wing governments. It's because South Korea is weaker than it used to be and more dependent on the United States than it used to be.
But that's a little bit, I have a different opinion, because we have a shipbuilding, we have batteries that the U.S. really needs, right? I think that was the point, the strong point that we had when we had the tariff deal. What do you think about that? I think that's the best. And then also Japan does not have those technology, like shipbuilding, let's say shipbuilding. So I think Trump really needed our shipbuilding technology. So that was the, I think, point that we had a better deal with Japan.
To some extent, but this technological relationship between US and South Korea, this is like this dependency goes two ways. But Chinese chip industry, the main reason they have not caught up with the Koreans yet is because of US export controls. The main reason why the Korean battery companies are so competitive in the American auto market is because of American subsidies and American restrictions on Chinese technology. And the main reason why, and shipbuilding, again, the Chinese are catching up in shipbuilding and in many ways have overtaken Korean shipbuilding already. And in almost every case, the problem is that with Korea, the main strength for Korea industrially speaking, used to be that it was cheaper. Then it was that it was higher tech. But now with the rise of China, Korea technology, and also Korea got richer. So Korea is not so cost competitive. In many cases, Korean labor is more expensive than Japanese labor, for example. And Korean technology is also increasingly not better than Chinese technology. So the main thing that Korea increasingly has, giving it the competitiveness, is not being Chinese. And that only matters because the Americans don't want to keep the Chinese out. If the Americans were happy for Chinese batteries to go into the American market, in other words, if the Americans were happy for the American market to be dominated by Chinese batteries, they would wipe out the Korean battery companies. So the Korean companies ultimately depend on the Americans more and more and more, because they're increasingly not competitive in the global markets. They need America. So America does need Korea to a certain extent, but ultimately, when you add security and the economic things, this is not a, you need America more than they need you still. So
of course, that's
this doesn't. I'm not happy saying it.
Oh, okay, sure,
But
sure.
so this is the sad thing, because anyone like me who is very pro-Korean and wants to see Korea like continue to flourish and be successful, the dream used to be that as Korea got richer and richer, it would become more and more independent. But now actually Korea is getting less and less independent and more dependent on the United States. Now, some people will say in the world of US-China competition that being very close to the US is a good thing. I'm not even saying it's a bad thing, but what I am saying is that the dream of a more autonomous Korea is weakening, I would say.
What was your impression after watching Xi Jinping and Lee Jae-myung's summit? That was the last summit that during the APEC.
Yeah, I mean, we have a phrase in English, after the Lord Mayor's show, which means when the big show has finished, no one really thinks about the the thing after. Look, Lee Jae-myung is a very good politician in the sense that he gives everyone the impression that he's on their side. He's good at doing that, which is interesting because in the past he was a very divisive politician.
Right.
But in Lee Jae-myung 2.0, he's everybody's friend. But when we talk about, for example, you said the Americans need they need our ships, for example.
Masga.
What is Masga about? Masga is about the Koreans helping the Americans build ships to fight the Chinese.
That's right.
So the Chinese aren't going to enjoy this, aren't going to like this. So this now, I think this discussion is basically over. That it used to be America for security and China for economy. Now it's America for both, and that's very clear looking at the Lee Jae-myung presidency that this discussion is over already. So in a sense, this is not like even a discussion to have anymore. It's too late. But what it will mean is, we saw, for example, the Chinese sanctioning Hanwha Ocean recently.
But they said they're gonna release it for 1 year, right?
They will, but again, as a part of a deal with the Americans, not as a deal with the Koreans. So this geopolitical competition is going to be rough. It's going to be rough.
Okay, so you said it will be very tough, right? Then, what is your point of view that now we are living in Trump era? What kind of strategy do you think Korea needs to have in order to survive?
Yeah, I mean, I think the point is that for example, all these big Korean investments in the United States, they started to happen before Trump. So
yeah, during Yoon Suk-yeol period, right?
Yoon and Moon, actually. Joe Biden came to Korea and announced the Hyundai mega plant in the state of Georgia in the Moon presidency. the big Samsung fab investments in Texas were made during the Yoon presidency under Biden still. So this shift to be dependent increasingly in the United States is something that is being dictated by the economic forces more than by President Trump or something like that. President Trump just makes it more dramatic, more difficult in many ways. The administration is harder to deal with. But this is a process that's already been happening. And you use the word survive. That's what everyone has to do. Just survive.
Right.
And I mean, people would normally say survive 3 more years. But of course, maybe the Trump presidency will go on longer. And then you have to survive longer. But I agree with you that unlike some other countries, for example, a lot of European countries, Korea does have assets that it can really bring that the Americans want. The only thing I would say, and this is the really difficult thing, is, for example, you mention Korean chips and batteries. Chips and batteries were both technologies invented in the United States and then developed first by the Japanese and then by the Koreans. Americans realized that they let their technologies go to Asia and now they want it back. So, you know, the Americans don't want you just to go and build and make money and go back. They want to, in the long run, reverse the process that Koreans benefited from. They want to learn it back from you.
And then develop.
And do it themselves.
And then, yeah, I know.
Because that's what the Koreans did. They learnt it from the America and various other, and from Japan, and they did it themselves. And now the Western countries realize that they let too much go and they want it back. Now, the Koreans have to strike this balance between, on the one hand, there's a big commercial opportunity by going into the American market and making things for the Americans. But if the Americans learn how to do it themselves, what does Korea have? You don't have size. You don't have, you won't have technology. You won't have that much money. So, and you have a shrinking population. So if you don't have technological leadership, what do you have? This is a difficult thing. The Americans went to China thinking that the Chinese need our technology. And what happened? 20 years later, the Chinese, of course, there are some things they need, but they need so much less than they used to. So this is a very, very difficult balance to strike. I'm not saying it's a mistake to go to America. I think you have no choice. But if we look back in 20 years and the Americans have learned back how things are done, what does Korea have to offer? The only way to survive then is to completely transform your economy away from these industries that you're based on now.
Really? 완전 조선업과 반도체 이런 데서 탈피해서 새로운 걸 하는데 maybe AI is the one. AI, right?
이미 늦었잖아요.
Yeah?
AI는 too late.
Yeah, but do you think American people can catch up our shipbuilding technology, even though, you know, it's like a man's skill, right? That's what people say. Some people says, let's say, oh, okay, Korean company Hana Ocean, they teach technology, they teach how to build a ship. It will be not easy for American to catch that because it's just man's skill, hand skill is kind of different.
If they are serious, they can do it.
They can do it.
And they have a great advantage is they can attract people from all over the world. They have best universities in the world. They have infinite resources to some extent in terms of land resources. Yeah, then they won't do it. But if they mobilize their strengths that they have, then they can do anything. But, you know, this is the thing about America. It can make you so depressed and frustrated, but it can be a very inspiring place. You know, they're obviously the people who put someone on the moon in the 1960s, but at the same time they do things and you think, you know, how could anyone look up to this country? It's very hard. All I would say is when technology was migrating to Asia, people would say, oh, could the Asians do this? Oh, yes, they can work, you know, I'm talking about like in the 50s or 60s or something. They say, oh, well, yeah, the Asians, they can work in a factory and they can make some clothes. Okay, and then they went up. Okay, fine. Okay, yeah, they can make some basic electronics things. And in the end, you know, anyone can do anything if they're smart, if they do anything. So can the Americans do it? Of course they can. Just like before, people questioned, can the Asians do these things? And the Asians proved they could do it better than anyone. There's a bit of like a reverse Asian prejudice, you know, that only we know how to do it and that others can't do it. But the Westerners used to think exactly the same thing about the Asians, that only we can do it and the Asians can't. Everyone can do it. All humans are capable of anything with the right leadership and the right decision making.
Okay.
So yeah, of course they can.
Thank you.
그 사실 우리가 이제 좀 그래도 국뽕에 차 있었던 것 같다. 지금 한국 경제 상황에 대해서
맞아요.
굉장히 냉정하게 평가를
맞아요.
해줬어요.
네.
우리는 되게 진보적인 또 언론인들은 미국에 대해서 굉장히 비판적인 시각을 갖고
맞아요.
있는데
네.
사실 한국이 이 정도 경제를 중국 옆에 있으면서도 유지할 수 있다는 게 사실 어떤 미국의 어떤 우산이나 중국 견제 때문일 수 있다는 것들 굉장히 냉정하게 짚어주셨고 그런 부분에 있어서 많이 배웠습니다.
네,
네, 아주 좋은
맞습니다.
시간이었습니다.
네.
Typical 아저씨.
네, 한국 남성들은 이렇게 하고
이게 사실 다들 너무 화가 나 있고 그냥 욕부터 하고 보니까
You're too serious.
I am.
But then